Hi, everybody. Welcome back to English 90. This is for our class for Monday, the 29th. And I hope you all had a long, enjoyable holiday weekend. Where we are is catching up a little bit on the syllabus because we've fallen a little bit behind. I wanted to talk about capitals, numbers, and abbreviations. I also wanted to talk about our upcoming paper number 3. And I also wanted to give you a sense of how the rest of the semester will be progressing. So where we are now in the class is talking about capitals. This is on page 562 to 568. When do you use capitals? You can see in the notes below, I've given you a list of the times in which you would use capitals. Whether you are beginning the first word in a sentence, that first letter is capitalized. And I think most of us are familiar with that convention. The names of people, those are capitalized, their first letter, or pronouns, I, because that's supposed to substitute for someone's name. The names of particular places or locations. Greenfield, for instance. The names of the days of the week, months, and holidays. So holidays, including something like, let's say Thanksgiving would be capitalized. Names of commercial products, anything that is a brand name. So if you are buying soap, that's a small s. But if you are buying Dove soap, that's a capital D because Dove is the name of the product. And think about how sometimes we actually confuse the two. Most people say they want a Band-Aid. That's the name of the product, Band-Aid. What we really want is a bandage. Most people say they want a Q-tip, and that's also the specific name of the product. What they want is a cotton swab, but most people don't say cotton swab. They say Q-tip. But anything that's considered to be a name, something that could be copyrighted or trademarked. Titles, the major words in a title, which you might have seen my commenting on when you were writing your journals. The names of unions, clubs, companies, associations, basically anything that has a name. So something like Girl Scouts, for instance, would be capitalized. A particular political parties would also be capitalized, Democrat, Republican, and so forth. Names that show family relationships. So, for instance, if you wanted to talk about your mother, that's a small m. But if the name you call her is mother, then that's a capital M because that's the name that you're using. The titles of people. And again, you might say that a professor would be a small p unless you were talking about professor of English, Lillian Ruiz. And then in this instance, it would be a capital P. Specific school courses are capitalized. So for instance, if you are taking Economics 101, capital E for economics. But if you're just registering for economics, then that's a small e. So again, it comes down to the names. Languages, however, are always capitalized. So that means if you are taking English, it's capitalized E for English, whether you are referring to the subject or you are referring to the title of the course, because languages are always capitalized. Geographic locations. Again, this is all about locations. Historical periods and events. So things like World War I, that would be capitalized. Races, nations, and nationalities, that would be capitalized. So capital A for African American, both would be capitalized, African and American. The opening and closings of letters, however, you only capitalize the first word in the closing, not the words that follow. So sincerely yours, capital S for sincerely, lowercase y for yours. And then numbers and abbreviations, and this is on page 570 to 573. Generally speaking, you should spell out numbers into words that are only one or two words long. So for instance, the number 24 can be written as two words, 20 and 4, Twenty FOUR. So you should write it out as a word. However, if it's a number that can be expressed or must be expressed in 3 or more words, then you should use the numerals. So 110, that's 4 words. So you should use the numbers 110. And if it turns out that you're using a good number of, pun intended, if you're using a good number of numbers and that some can be expressed in 1 or 2 words, but some need to be expressed in 3 or 4 or 5 words or however many, then the general rule is to be consistent and just use numerals throughout. That said, There are some times when we always use numerals, when we are talking about a date, for instance, an address, a time, a percentage, or a book chapter. We can just use the numerals there. And again, all of this is in the notes below. And then abbreviations. You want to avoid abbreviations except when you're using the abbreviations with a name. Something like Mr. is actually Mister, but we say Mr period, rather than writing out the entire name. Time, something like a PM for post morning, but again, we don't say post morning, we say PM. Or organizations that are primarily known by their initials, such as the FBI. You don't really have to write out Federal Bureau of Investigation. So again, generally speaking, avoid abbreviations, write out the word unless it's a convention to use that abbreviation. So that leads us to where we are for paper number 3. And I posted this right before our Thanksgiving that for paper number 3, you are going to be writing 5 paragraphs. And this was the practice writing assignment that I gave you, the practice final, which you should have received back from me at this point. Not graded, but I would have given some comments. And you would have noted that you had 3 questions to choose from. And what I'm going to ask you to do for paper number 3 is choose one of the 2 questions you did not elect to write about. So you can see that those are listed below, so you can make the decision. And that'll be your attendance question for today, by the way. It's going to be which question are you going to be answering for paper number 3. And paper number 3 is going to be due this upcoming Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. So I thought that I would keep today's class short so that you could pretty much work on paper number 3. Keep in mind the suggestions that I did with your practice final, because you will want to incorporate those suggestions in the question that you ultimately answer for paper number 3. And we will end the semester with having a final examination that will look very similar to what we did with the practice final, with different questions, of course. But it gives you an idea of basically the kinds of writing that you'll be doing in school. And our last writing assignment, which I'll talk about next class, will be 5 or more paragraphs. So that basically is our standard now. But for paper number 4, you won't be writing about your personal experiences. You'll be writing about one of the essays that we talked about earlier from our textbook. And also, you can see in our syllabus that we've got something of something called journal presentations. Journal number 6 is the last journal. So what is journal number 6 going to be about? This I'm going to ask you to present. If we were basically meeting live, you would do this in class. That's obviously not happening. So instead, what I'm going to ask you to do is to do it on our discussion form. And basically, it's going to be you talking about which journal did you, out of the 5 that we've read and discussed over the course of the semester, which of those 5 journals did you find to be the most informative, and what were the 3 most important things that you learned from that particular journal? But again, I'll talk about this a little bit more because that's what we will be doing for the journal presentations. And if you notice on the syllabus, I also have scheduled something called individual consultations, and I'll be talking about this a little bit more next class as well, where basically what I'm just going to ask you to do is to touch base with me, whether it be via email or it be via telephone or via Zoom, however you prefer, just to see how things are going with you in the semester, registering for next semester and things of that nature. So that'll pretty much do it for today, now that we've talked about capitals, numbers, and abbreviations. And next class, we will continue on by talking a little bit about these last upcoming assignments before the ending of our semester. So I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well, and we will continue on next class. Take care. Bye-bye.